All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome to our YouTube channel here where we are going to be going live and running through the SAT practice test number 10, the math sections of this, sections 3 and 4. So we're going to be talking about a lot of useful things that you can do on this test strategy-wise to help you out with some of these math questions. And we're just going to go ahead and begin. So let's open this up to section 3 here and take a look at some of these questions. Also, just so you know, this stream, anyone that's watching on TikTok right now, this stream is also on YouTube, which you might get a better view of it on YouTube if you hop over there. And if you guys have any questions, make sure to throw them in the super chat and I'll make sure to answer those questions immediately. All right, so let's take a look at some of these questions and start rolling through this here. All right. So starting with question number 1 here, it says, what value of z satisfies the equation above? Okay, so very simply here, we have 2z plus 1 is equal to z. So we're just going to go ahead and solve this for z. So I'm going to subtract off the z from both sides here. So I get 1z plus 1 is equal to 0. And then very simply just going to subtract 1 from both sides. So we get that z is equal to -1. Or choice B here. All right, let's take a look at question 2 then. A television with the price of $300 is to be purchased with an initial payment of $60 and weekly payments of $30. Which of the following equations can be used to find the number of weekly payments W required to complete the purchase, assuming that there's no taxes or fee? Okay, well, our television here costs $300, so that's what we need to get to. Okay, and what we know is we're making an initial payment of $60. So we're going to pay $60 right off the bat. And then in addition to that, we're making weekly payments of $30, meaning we're paying $30 per week. So our setup should look exactly like this, and the answer that's the exact same as that would just be choice C. Okay, so you don't have to worry about solving it for a question like that. Just make sure you get the initial equation set up. All right, moving on here, let's take a look at number 3. It says the table above shows shipping charges for an online retailer that sells sporting goods. There is a linear relationship between shipping charge and the weight of the merchandise. Which function can be used to determine the shipping charge f of x in dollars for an order with a merchandise weight of x pounds? Okay, so let's take a look at this here. So we need to figure out which one of these equations works. Okay, so first things first, I'd probably just take any 2 points to find the slope between them. Okay, so why don't we just go ahead and take our first 2 points here. So we have the points 5, 16.94. And we also have the point 10, 21.89. Okay, so starting this out, to find the slope, okay, so that's the change in y over change in x, or y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm going to go ahead and substitute this in. This is like x1 and y1. And then we have our x2 and y2 value. So we have 21.89 minus 16.94 over 10 minus 5. Okay, so if I do that out here, we have 21.89 and we're subtracting off 16.94. So we can go ahead and just do this out here. And we'll end up that this comes out to be 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 495. So it'd be 495 over 5, which is really close to $1 here. Okay, so you could see right off the bat here, our slope is going to be 0.99. So this is roughly 0.99 here. And then as we go through this, we just need to determine, okay, well, will our function here have a y-intercept or not? Well, if you look, every 5, okay, it's increasing by 495. So if I were to just go back to 0, that would just be another 495 off, meaning that it's going to be 1199 as our y-intercept, choice B. Okay, we know it's not going to be at 0, which means A has to be ruled out, and the other 2 don't even have that slope. So we'd be done with that. Okay, or you could also do this a much simpler way. Okay, that's the long way of doing this, where you could imagine 0.99 as being really close to 1, and this is basically 12, so it's almost basically like 1 plus 12 here, so 1x plus 12. You could just take these points here and just sub them in and see if they come out to be close to that. So like if I put in 20, 20 times 1 would be 20 plus 12 would be 32. That's really close to this. If I put in 10, 10 plus 12 would be 22 there, really close to 2189. And that's going to be the closest of all these equations here. So we also know that that would be choice B. All right, let's continue on here and look at question number 4 then next. It says the line in the xy plane above represents the relationship between the height h of x in feet and the base diameter x in feet for cylindrical Doric columns in Greek architecture. How much greater is the height of a Doric column that has a base diameter of 5 feet than a height of a Doric column that has a base diameter of 2 feet? Okay, well, let's take a look at this here. When it's 2 feet, we know the height is 14, so we can imagine that as the point 214. When it was 5 feet, the height was 35, so we have 535. So if we're trying to figure out how much greater the height is at the diameter 5, here's the height at 5, how much greater is that than 14? Well, 35 minus 14 very simply would just be 21 here. Choice C. All right, let's take a look at number 5 then. So for number 5 here, it says if x is greater than 0, which of the following is equivalent to this expression? Okay, so there's a few things you could do. If you don't know how to simplify this, you could always just go ahead and substitute in a value for x. But very simply here, this is the same thing as saying the square root of 9 times the square root of x squared. And we know the square root of 9 is just simply 3. Square root of x squared is just x. So that would be 3x. But again, if you had trouble with this or you weren't 100% sure of that fact, you can always substitute in. So if it says x is a number that's greater than 0, sub in a value for x. Why don't I say like x is 2 here? If I put that into my expression, this would become the square root of 9 times 2 squared, which would be the same thing as 9, the square root of 9 times 4, or the square root of 36. Oh, well, I know the square root of 36 is just very simply equal to 6 here. So if that's my answer when x is 2, I can go to my answers here and say, oh, well then 3 times 2 is 6, and we know that A definitely has to be the answer there. So you can always use that strategy to help you out as well. All right, continuing on, let's go ahead and take a look at number 6 here. So number 6, it says, what are all values of x that satisfy that equation above? Okay, now there's a few ways you can go about doing this one. You could actually just go and solve it algebraically. However, if you go and solve it algebraically, you're still going to have to check your answers at the end anyway. So what I personally recommend is they give you the answers, or potential answers, I should say. So if this says, what are all the values of x for this? Well, it has to be some of these. So we could just very simply test them out. Now, I would test out the easy ones first, like let's say 0 here. If I put in 0, that would be 0 minus 1 over 0 minus 1. Does that equal negative 2? Well, that would be negative 1 over negative 1, which is 1. So that does not work. So I can really quickly rule this out. And also, with choice C here, if I look at 1, if I put 1 into my equation here, 1 minus 1 would give me 0 as my denominator. You never want to have 0 as a denominator. You can't divide by 0. So automatically, I know that one has to be ruled out as well. Now, it doesn't make sense to try to look for negative 3 and test that one out, because I already know that negative 3 must work. That's in both of these here. So all I need to do is check to see if negative 1 works. So let's test that out. If I did negative 1 squared minus 1 over negative 1 minus 1, I want to see, does that equal negative 2? Okay, well, negative 1 squared would be 1. 1 minus 1 over, I'm jumping ahead of myself here. 1 minus 1 over negative 1 minus negative 1 being negative 2. But we know 1 minus 1 is just 0. 0 over negative 2 does not equal negative 2. So that will not work, which means for number 6 here, our answer has to be A. All right, let's look at number 7 next. Okay, so we're given the graph of y equals f of x is shown in the xy plane. What is the value of f of 0? Okay, so just kind of looking at this, if you don't remember how this works, they tell us this. y is equal to f of x. So if they want to know what f of 0 is, okay, kind of like line up your things here. So what this is saying is when x is 0, we want to know what is the y value. Well, let's go to our graph here. When x is 0, okay, that's at this point right here, I could see that that y value is 4. So my answer must be D for that one. All right, continuing on the non-calculator section here, we come across question number 8. It says, in the figure above, point B lies on AD. What is the value of 3x? Okay, well, before we find 3x, we should probably figure out what x is. Okay, and a good thing that I like to do here is use this like circle thing. So we know in a circle, there's 360 degrees. So if I have half of a circle, I know that that's 180 degrees. So all these angles up, added up, have to equal 180 degrees. So let's go ahead and do that. We have 90 degrees plus x plus 2x plus 2x. Those all have to give me 180 here. So now we can just go ahead and solve for x. So 1x plus 2x plus 2x, that's going to be 5x plus the 90 equals 180. And then very simply here, we'll just subtract off the 90, minus off the 90. So we get 90 is equal to 5x. Okay, and then we'll just simply divide by 5. Okay, and 90 divided by 5, I want to say that's 18, but we could just test this out. Remember, you got to remember how to do long division in the non-calculator part here. 5 goes into 9 once, which would be 5, minus 9 minus 5 is 4. We bring down the 0. 5 goes into 40 exactly 8 times. So it was, in fact, 18. So there's my x value. But again, don't choose that. Okay, that's a trap answer here put in for A. We didn't want what x was. We wanted what 3x was. So I have to multiply both sides by 3. So we get that 3x is equal to 54, which is choice C here. All right, and then we're looking at question number 9 here. So for question number 9, it says, which of the following is the equation of the line in the xy plane above? Okay, well, again, a few ways you can do this. Simplest way I'm going to do is actually just figure out what the equation of the line would be. So I'm going to start with my slope. So I'm going to notice we go down 4 and we go over 4. So down 4 over 4. Okay, slope is your rise over your run. So if I went down 4 over 4, that would be a slope of -1. So I know my equation starts off as y equals mx plus b. We just found the m value, so that'd be -1x plus b. And we know what the y-intercept is, because that's when x is 0. So x is at 0 at -4. So I know my b value here is -4. So my equation is y equals -1x minus 4, or -x minus 4. Now, unfortunately, my answers aren't written like that. Okay, they have the x and the y on the same side. So all I need to do is bring my x back over to the other side by adding x to both sides. So we get x plus y is equal to -4. And you could see it, that's just choice C here. All right, let's go ahead then to question number 10 here. Okay, remember again, if you're on TikTok right now and you want to watch this a little bit better or a little bit clearer, you can go ahead and head over to the YouTube channel at Beyond the Test to watch this here. But looking at number 10 here, it says the graph of y equals 2x squared plus 10x plus 12 is shown. If the graph crosses the y-axis at the point 0, k, what is the value of k? All right, now, nice thing about this, on this test, when they give you an equation and they give you a point, most of the time, all you need to do is take that point and substitute it right into your equation. So the x value is 0 and the y value is k. So I'm going to replace the y with k and I'm going to replace my x with 0. Okay, so we're going to write that out here. And then we're just going to solve this, okay? 2 times 0 squared is just 0. Anything times 0 is 0. 10 times 0 is 0, so that leaves me just with 12. Choice D here. Okay, number 11, it says a circle in the xy plane has a center of 5, 7 and a radius of 2. Which of the following is the equation of the circle? Okay, so for this question, make sure you know the equation of a circle for this test. I'm going to write it down here. So the equation of a circle is given as this. It's x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared. And h comma k is going to be the center of the circle, and r is the radius. Now, the way that most people do remember this equation in the center is they think of it as being the opposite sign. So if the center is at 5, 7, then when you write it, you want to put x minus 5, x minus 7, okay? Because our equation here starts with these minus signs. So we're going to get x minus 5 squared plus y minus 7 squared equals the radius squared. So if our radius is 2 here, 2 squared would very simply just be 4. And we can see that that's just choice A there. All right, then moving up here to question number 12. It says, in the figure above, triangle ABC is similar to triangle DEF. What is the value of the cosine of E? Okay, first things first, I want you guys to note that when you have similar triangles, the corresponding angles are going to be congruent to each other. So if I'm looking for the cosine of E, E corresponds with angle B over here. Those two angles are going to be congruent. So that means that they're going to have the same measure here. So if I'm looking for the cosine of E, that's the same thing as saying the cosine of angle B. Okay, well, if that's just the cosine of angle B, then I can just go ahead and do that from angle B, which already has numbers in it. And remember, from SOHCAHTOA, okay, cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse there. Okay, so cosine adjacent over hypotenuse. So adjacent to this angle is going to be 12, and the hypotenuse, always across from the right angle, is 13. So our cosine of B, which is equal to the cosine of E, is just simply 12 over 13. Choice B there. All right, then let's take a look at number 13. Okay, so for number 13 here, it says, in the xy plane, the graph of the function f of x equals x squared plus 5x plus 4 has two x-intercepts. We want to know what is the distance between those x-intercepts. Okay, so first things first, let's find the x-intercepts. Okay, remember, to find the x-intercepts, you're going to go ahead and set your y value, or f of x value, equal to 0 there. So we're going to get that 0 is equal to x squared plus 5x plus 4. Okay. And now we're going to go ahead and factor this down. So if you don't remember, we're looking for two numbers that add to 5 but multiply to 4. Okay, and we make our little double bubble here. Okay, and we put our x to start. Since it's x squared, square root of x squared is just x. The numbers that add to a positive 5 and multiply to 4, you should know that this is positive 4 and positive 1. 4 times 1 is 4, 4 plus 1 is 5. So then to go ahead and get our x-intercepts, we just simply tee this off and set each one of those equal to 0. So we'll get that x is negative 4 and x is negative 1. So what's the distance from negative 4 to negative 1? Well, that's simply just a distance of 3 here. All right, next problem, we have 14 there. Okay, so it says, what are all values of x that satisfy the given equation? Now, I actually really love this question because it seems like such an easy question right off the bat, but I can't tell you how many students make a mistake on this for a conceptual misunderstanding, okay? So I'll explain that as we go through the problem, actually. So let's take a look at this problem. It says, what are all values of x that satisfy the equation above? Okay, let's test this out here. Let's start with 1. If I substitute 1 into that equation here, it'd be 4 times 1. Square root of 4 times 1 is equal to 1 minus 3. So this would be the square root of 4 is equal to 1 minus 3 is negative 2. But is the square root of 4 equal to negative 2? And this is where I think this misunderstanding happens. Okay, square root of 4 is not equal to negative 2. Square root of 4 is only equal to positive 2. Okay, I think where people get confused about this is if you had the equation x squared equaled 4, then your two answers would be both positive 2 and negative 2. But the reason that happens is when you take the square root of both sides, you're putting a plus or minus in front of your 4 here. So we're getting x is equal to plus or minus 2. Okay, so the reason why we have the negative there is because we have a negative in front of the radical sign. Okay, if you don't have that negative in front of the radical sign, then it is just always just a positive. So square root of 4 is just positive 2, not negative 2. All right, so that doesn't work. So anything with a 1 is out, which eliminates A and C here. Okay, let's see if number 2 here, number 9, works. So we get the square root of 4 times 9. Does that equal 9 minus 3? Well, that would be a square root of 36. 9 minus 3 is 6 here. So the square root of 36 is just equal to 6, and that is true. So 2 works, which means it would just be choice B there. Okay, heading up to question 15 then. This is a really good question, a really common question on the SAT as well. So it says here, in the system of equations above, A is a constant. For which of the following values of A does the system have no solution? Okay, so let's underline and talk about what that means. Okay, first off, these are linear equations. Okay, they can all be written into y equals mx plus b form. Now, if you have no solution, what's true about your two lines? Think about this. Well, let's talk about what it means to have a solution. Okay, first off, when you have a solution is where your lines intersect, right? So if I had two lines here, the solution would be where they intersect, because it's where it's equal for both equations. So if you have no solution, that means your two lines here never intersect. And the kind of lines that never intersect are parallel lines. Okay. And we know parallel lines have the same slope. So there's actually a trick you can use for this question that will save you a ton of time on this test. We know that slope is just a ratio of your y to your x values here. So you can actually just take the coefficients of your x and y terms and set them equal to each other. What do I mean by that? Well, here's what I mean. If I take negative 3 to 1, that ratio has to be the same as A to 2. Because that's going to be the ratio of their slopes, and their slopes are the same. So that ratio has to be the same. So if I solve this for A, we could just cross multiply, and we get A times 1, which is A here, and negative 3 times 2, which is just negative 6. So the answer, very simply, would be A. Now, if you really wanted to, you could go ahead and put those into y equals mx plus b, both equations, and then set the slopes equal to each other. But that's just a lot more work. And remember, this is a time test. So anything you can do to save yourself some time, you want to use, or do here, I should say. Okay, so let's go down here then. So that takes care of the first part here. Now we're going to take a look at some of the grading questions where you don't have the answers. Okay. So let's start with question number 16. It says a manufacturer shipped units of a certain product to 2 locations. The equation above shows the total shipping cost T in dollars for shipping C units to the closer location and shipping F units to the farther location. If the total shipping cost was $47,000 and 3,000 units were shipped to the farther location, how many units were shipped to the closer location? Okay, so now this is pretty simple here. Okay, they give you the equation. All you have to do is fill this in. So we know the total shipping cost is $47,000. Okay. And it said 3,000 were shipped to the farther. So we're going to put that in for F here. 12 times 3,000. And we're just going to simply solve for C. Okay, so we have 47,000 equals 5C. 12, 24, 36. So that'd be 36,000 there. and then solve for c. So minus off the 36,000, minus off the 36,000, and we get that 5c is equal to 11,000. And then we're just going to go ahead and divide by 5 here. Okay, now again, you don't have a calculator here, so unfortunately you can't just type that into the calculator. So if you don't remember or don't know how to do that easily off the top of your head, just go ahead and use long division. Okay, we could just say to ourselves, all right, 5 goes into 11 2 times, which is 10. That leaves us with 1 left over. Bring down your 0 here. 5 goes into 10 twice, which leaves us 10, so there's nothing left. So 5 goes in 0, well, it doesn't. And then bring down the 0. 5 goes in 0, it doesn't. So it would just be 2200. And there's our answer. All right, number 17 is a good question here. A lot of people do forget how to do this one. So it says, if A and B are solutions to that equation above, what is the value of the absolute value of A minus B? Okay, so let's think about absolute value and what it does. So absolute value takes everything that's inside the absolute value and turns it positive. So if I'm trying to solve this here for the absolute value of 2x plus 1 is equal to 5, well, the only way I can end up with 5 is if inside the absolute value I have 5, which would be 5, or inside the absolute value I have negative 5, because then that would also equal 5. So to solve for x here, you're going to take what's inside your absolute value there. You're going to set one of them equal to 5. And then you're going to do a second equation and set it equal to negative 5. Because inside here, like we just said, could be 5. Or inside here could be negative 5. Okay, so let's do it. So we have 2x plus 1 equals 5. And we have 2x plus 1 equals negative 5. So let's go ahead and solve these two equations then. So I'm going to start by subtracting 1 from both sides here. So we get 2x is equal to 4. And then very simply divide by 2, we'll get x is 2. So there's our first answer. And then over here, minus off the 1, we'll get 2x is negative 6. And then divide by 2, and we'll get that x is negative 3. So there's our two values. So we'll let this one be a is 2, and we'll let this one be b is negative 3. So I'm going to take those and put them into my expression here. So then the absolute value of a minus b would be the absolute value of 2 minus negative 3. 2 minus negative 3 would be 5. The absolute value of 5 is 5. So there would be our answer. And we're done. Okay, so I saw there's a question in the chat. Are these questions similar to what's on the ACT? These questions are going to be similar to questions on the ACT. There will be some slight differences, but most of the topics do overlap. There's maybe 1 or 2 topics that you might see on this one that you won't see on the ACT and vice versa. But yes, they will be very similar. Okay, let's take a look at question number 18 here. It says, Juan purchased an antique that had a value of $200 at the time of purchase. Each year, the value of the antique is estimated to increase 10% over its value the previous year. The estimated value of the antique in dollars 2 years after purchase can be represented by the expression 200A, where A is a constant. What is the value of A? All right, so here's what we know. We're starting with $200. Okay, and it's going to increase in value 10% each year. Okay, so we care about in 2 years what's going to happen. Well, if I increase this 10%, we have to figure out what 10% of 200 would be. Now, some of you might know that right away and be able to do that, and that's great. If you know it, awesome. Okay, if you don't, here's a trick for you. Okay, and the 10% trick is this. If you have 200 and you just multiply or move the decimal over 1 to the left, okay, that's 10%. So if we have 200, 10% is 20. So if I increase this by 10%, this would become 220. Okay, now that works for 10% here. And if you needed 20%, you could just double that. It would be 40, 30% would be 60, and so forth and so forth. Or if that's confusing for you, to figure out 20%, you could just simply take your number 200 and multiply it by 10 over 100 if we're looking for 10%. So if we were finding 10% here, we could do this. 200 divided by 100 is just 2, and 2 times 10 would be 20. So that's another way you could do this as well. Okay. All right, so that would be the first 10%. Now we got to do this again. I need to take 10% of this. So I'm just going to use my decimal trick here. If we had 220, 10%, I move the decimal over once, would be 22. So 10% is 22. So if I increase that by 10%, I increase it by 22, this becomes 242 here. Okay, so this is going to be in 2 years. Now the expression in 2 years we know is represented by 200a. So what I'm going to do then is take 200a and set it equal to 242. And now I just want to solve for a. So I'm very simply just going to divide by 200 here. Divide by 200. So we have a is 242 over 200. That might be a little bit complicated to do, so I'm just going to divide everything in half. 242 divided in half, 2 divided by 2 is 1, 4 divided by 2 is 2, 2 divided by 2 is 1, so that'd be 121 over 200 divided by 2 would just be 100. And whenever you're dividing by 100, you could just move the decimal to the left there. So this would just simply be 1.21. And there's your answer. Okay, now if you have watched my TikToks before, you've probably seen question 19, okay? And there's a very good trick for this one. It says, based on the system of equations above, what is the value of 5x plus 5y? Now, right off the bat, I notice this is really weird. It's not saying what is x or what is y, or maybe like even x plus y or x minus y. 5x plus 5y. That's very specific. If you get something like this on the test, see if you can force 5x plus 5y to happen. And in this example, we can. Okay? To get 5x plus 5y, I can actually just add my two system of equations here together. So 2x plus 3x would be 5x. 3y plus 2y would just simply be 5y. And then 1200 plus 1300 would be 2500. So 5x plus 5y is 2500. You don't need to go through all the math to figure out what x is and what y is. You could simply just try to solve for what your goal is, which is 5x plus 5y. All right, and then we get to question number 20 here. So question 20, it says, if u plus t is equal to 5 and u minus t is equal to 2, what is the value of u minus t times u squared minus t squared? Okay, a lot of people get stuck on this question. And the reason is a lot of people try to substitute in the values for u and t. However, it's not so simple if you do that, because most people say, oh, this is probably like 3 and 2, but then 3 minus 2 does not equal 2. Okay, well that doesn't work. So then people are like, oh, what about 4 and 1? They go 4 and 1, well 4 minus 1, that's still not equal to 2. So you can't use those values because those don't work, and 5 and 0, that doesn't work either. Okay, the actual numbers that work are going to be 3.5 and 1.5. But then that becomes difficult to do down here when you have to do 3.5 squared and 1.5 squared. So I don't recommend doing that for this problem. What I do recommend doing is factoring or simplifying this expression down. Okay, and you should always try to simplify or factor before you use substitution anyway. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to leave my u minus t from the beginning here. I'm just bringing that down. But now u squared minus t squared, I can factor that using dots. Okay, and that's where you take the square root of each one. So like square root of u squared is just u. Square root of t squared is just t. And then all you do is you put one positive and one negative. And that's how we factor that. Now the reason why this is helpful is if you look at your problem here, it says u plus t is equal to 5. Oh, well, right here I have u plus t. So I can just replace that with 5. And then we also have here that u minus t is equal to 2. But I have u minus t right here and a u minus t right here. So I can just substitute in 2 for both of those. Oh, so look at that. It's just 2 times 5 times 2, which would just be 20. And that would be our answer right here. And you're done. Okay, so very simple. There's a lot of these different tricks that you can use for this test, so make sure you're trying to take advantage of those. All right, I'm going to stop here just for a quick 5-minute break. So stay tuned. We're going to be going through the calculator section next here. All right, so I will be right back, but don't go anywhere. All right, guys, so we are back here, and we're going to be looking at the calculator section now, which is section 4. So let's go ahead and take a look. And again, you can use your calculator for this section. So we'll start to roll through some of these here. So let's go ahead and start with number 1 here. It says a helicopter initially hovering 40 feet above the ground begins to gain altitude at a rate of 21 feet per second. Which of the following functions represents the helicopter's altitude above the ground, y, in feet, t seconds after the helicopter begins to gain altitude? Okay, so let's think about this. We know right off the bat here, it's starting at 40 feet above the ground. So we know that that's at 40. And it's gaining altitude, meaning it's going up, so we're going to be adding 21 feet per second. So that means we're doing 21 feet per second, means we want to multiply it by how many t seconds there are. So the equation that simply does this is choice B. Okay, moving on here to question number 2. It says a text message plan charges a flat fee of $5 per month for up to 100 text messages sent, plus 25 cents for each additional text message sent that month. Which of the following graphs represents the cost Y of sending X text messages per month here? Okay, well, right now they start with a flat fee of 5. So it has to start with a flat fee of 5 until we get to 100. So that automatically keeps A in and it keeps B in, but C starts to shoot up in cost. We don't want that. And D, although it'd be nice, we don't want the cost to go down here, according to our problem. Okay, so now what we know here is, in addition to that, after they get to 100, okay, it costs 25 cents for each additional text message. So your cost is going to go up after that. Okay, so which means it has to be choice A here, because B, the cost is going down. You're not going to take away if you send more than 100 text messages. No, they're going to charge you more for 100 text messages plus. All right, then we have 3 here. So 3, it says Jake buys a bag of popcorn at the movie theater. He eats half the popcorn during the 15 minutes of previews. Kind of sounds like me. After eating half the popcorn, he stops eating for the next 30 minutes. Then he gradually eats the popcorn until he accidentally spills all the remaining popcorn. Oh man, poor Jake over here. He's not having a good movie experience. Which of the following graphs could represent this poor man's situation? Okay, so let's take a look. So he buys popcorn. He has all the popcorn in the bag. But within the first 15 minutes, it gets cut in half. Okay, so let's look at some of our charts here. Here's 15 minutes. So at 15 minutes, he's right here. That looks about to be halfway where he started. Okay, for this one, same thing. That could be about halfway. Here, 15 minutes, that looks about halfway from where he starts. And choice D, well, the amount of popcorn in the bag here started here. It's somehow saying that he's gaining popcorn as time goes on. Now, that clearly is not the case, or not even possible, unless he's going out and buying more popcorn. I guess that would be possible, but not for this situation. So D automatically gets ruled out here. Okay, so let's see what happens next. Okay, after that, he stops eating for the next 30 minutes. So from 15 to 45, the amount of popcorn in the bag has to remain constant. Okay, just from 15 to 45. So from 15 to 45 here, well, that'd be over here. So we can see that that doesn't work because that isn't constant, okay, to 45. So A is going to be out here. B, up to 45 here, you can see, okay, that is constant. And C here, that also remains constant from 15 to 45 for the next half hour. Okay, then what happened after that? Okay, then he gradually eats the popcorn until he accidentally spills. So after that, he's eating the popcorn. The amount of popcorn in the bag should be going down after that. So B, the amount of popcorn is going down. Once again, over here, choice C, the amount of popcorn is going up. If he's eating the popcorn, it's not going up. Choice C would be gone. This has to be choice B here. All right, moving on. We have question 4 here. It says, if 20 minus x is equal to 15, what is the value of 3x? Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and solve this here. So 20 minus x is equal to 15. Let's just go ahead and add the x to the other side, and then let's subtract the 15 here, and we'll get that x is equal to 5. Now, don't fall for the trap. Do not select choice A here. Okay, a lot of people fall for that. Look at the question. What is 3x? Okay, so I have to multiply both sides by 3 to get that 3x is equal to 15, which is why we're looking at choice C here. All right, then we have question 5 here. For the function f defined above, what is the value of f of negative 1? Okay, so again, I'm just going to rewrite this. F of x is x plus 3 over 2. So if we're looking for f of negative 1, all that means is we replace x with negative 1. So we're going to replace our x here with negative 1. So we get negative 1 plus 3 over 2. 3 minus 1 is 2. 2 divided by 2 would very simply just be 1. So that's going to be choice C here. Okay, question 6 says, which of the following is equivalent to 2x times x squared minus 3x? Now again, you could go ahead and simplify this, or substitute a number, and you'll get the same answer and match it. That's fine, but it's much easier if you do simplify this first. So let's go ahead and just distribute this through here. So 2x times x squared would become 2x cubed. Remember, when you're multiplying, you add the exponents. Okay, 2x times a negative 3x would be negative 6x squared. Again, you add the exponents. 1 and 1 would be 2. So if you just distribute that through very fast here, you'll get that this is answer choice D. Okay, then we have question number 7 here. Let me just see. Okay, yeah, we're good. It says a retail company has 50 large stores located in different areas throughout a state. A researcher for the company believes that employee job satisfaction varies greatly from store to store. Which of the following sampling methods is most appropriate to estimate the proportion of all employees of the company who are satisfied with their job? Okay, so we're trying to find the ones that are satisfied with their job. What the best way to do that would be, let's take a look at A here. Selecting one of the 50 stores at random and then surveying each employee at that store. Well, is that going to give us a good representation of the employees at all 50 stores? No, right? You might have good management at one store, but not so good management at the other 49 stores. So that's not going to be a good sample of the entire company. When you're doing samples and surveys, you want them to be as random as possible, okay? Really spread out and just very random. But let's look at B here. Selecting 10 employees from each store at random and then surveying each employee selected. Now, the reason why I like this one is what I was just saying. They have the word random in there. So this sounds really good. So I'm going to keep that in. But let's check the other ones. C, surveying the 25 highest paid employees and the 25 lowest paid employees. Is that going to give you a good feel for the entire company? No. Because the 25 highest employees might be biased in a certain way, and the 25 lowest might be biased in a certain way. And when you're doing a survey or sample, you do not want any kind of bias. So that's going to be out here. And then D here, it says creating a website on which employees can express their opinions and then using the first 50 responses. Okay, that's also not a good idea because it's not random. Okay, people are showing up there, and you're only going to get certain individuals to leave their feedback. So that's not going to be a good idea because we're not creating randomness. So B, since it's random, would be the best answer here. All right, moving on. Let's go ahead and take a look at number 8. So number 8 here, it says the two graphs above show the total amounts of money that Ian and Jeremy each have deposited into their savings account for the first 7 weeks after opening their accounts. After they made their initial deposits, how much more did Ian deposit each week than Jeremy? Okay, so after their initial deposits, so initially we have Jeremy putting $300 in, and we have Ian putting $100 in. So now I don't care about that. I want to know after that what happens. So basically we're just comparing the slopes of these two lines here. So I'm going to pick 2 points. Let's start with Jeremy here. So we're going to use the 0, 300. And I'm going to use this point. This will be a little bit easier. 2, 400. 2, 400. Okay, so this is for Jeremy. And we're going to go ahead and find the slope there. Okay, so slope, like we said before, is your y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we have 100 over 2, which would be 50 there. So Jeremy's putting in $50 each week. Now let's go to Ian. Okay, I'm going to select 2 points from Ian's line. I'm going to use the 0, 100 there. And then, well, I could say 1 and 200 here. 1 and 200. So if we do the slope here, it's pretty easy to see, but 200 minus 100 over 1 minus 0. 200 minus 100 would be 100 over 1, which is just 100. So Ian's putting in $100 per week. So you could see after they made their initial deposits, Ian's putting in $50 more per week, which is just going to be choice C here. All right, then we're going to go to question number 9. It says the function h is defined above. What is the value of h of 5 minus h of 3? Okay, so if we have h of x is equal to 2 to the x, let's start with what h of 5 would be. Okay, so again, if it lines up, it's going to be equal. So the x is going to be equal to 5 here. So we're getting 2 to the 5th. Okay, now 2 to the 5th, if you don't remember it, that's the same thing as 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. Okay, but this is the calculator section, so if you want to just put that into your calculator, you can. So that would be 32 there. And let's figure out what h of 3 would be. So h of 5 minus h of 3. H of 5 is 32. H of 3 here, okay, would just be 2 to the 3rd power, which is very simply just 8. So we're getting 8. So 32 minus 8, very simply, is just 24. All right, moving on here, let's go ahead and take a look at question number 10. It says, a researcher surveyed a random sample of students from a large university about how often they see movies. Using the sample data, the researcher estimated that 23% of the students in the population saw a movie at least once per month. The margin of error for this estimation is 4%. Which of the following is most appropriate conclusion about all students at the university based on the given estimate and the margin of error? Okay, so let's take a look and let's kind of read through these. A, it is unlikely that less than 23% of students see a movie at least once per month. Well, that's not true because we have a margin of error of 4%. Okay, that could be in either direction. So that's ruled out right away. Let's go to B. It says at least 23%, but no more than 25% of the students see a movie at least once per month. Again, that's not what we're saying at all here. Okay, we're given 4%. That means it could be a 4% swing in either direction, and it's not a guarantee. Okay, so B is going to be out here. C says the researcher is between 19% and 27% sure that most students see a movie at least once per month. Okay, now that actually sounds kind of good, but let's read choice D here. D says it is plausible that the percentage of students who see a movie at least once per month is between 19 and 27%. And that's what we want to suggest, okay? We want D. That's the best answer for this, okay? Because it's the most appropriate conclusion. Because again, this doesn't guarantee, just because you survey a bunch of students, 23% see this movie, once at least once per month. Okay, let's try to say that correctly. Doesn't guarantee that that's exactly going to represent the whole population. It's plausible that it will, and that's why that's the better answer here over C. All right, let's go to 11 here then. 11 says the table above shows the two lists of numbers. Which of the following is true comparing list A and list B? Okay, so here's our choices. They say the means are the same, the standard deviations are different, the means are the same, standard deviations are the same, or vice versa, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so, well, if I see mean and standard deviation, I should probably figure out what the mean and the standard deviation would be for both of these. Now, a lot of people know how to do mean, but they forget what standard deviation is. Okay, and standard deviation is how far you are away from the mean. So there is a trick you can actually do, and I'm going to show you this in the calculator because I think it's really important. So if you're using a TI-84 calculator, you'll be able to do this here. And what you're going to do is if you go to Stat and then click on Edit. Let me clear out my list here first. Okay. Under L1, I'm just going to put that first list. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now once you have your stuff typed in here, you can just click Stat, go to Calc, and then you're going to click on one var stats. Okay, and we just want the list to be L1. We don't have a frequency list here, so we can just make sure that that's blank. We can click calculate. Now it will tell me what the mean is. The mean is going to be this x bar, which is the first thing. So the mean is 3.5. And this little like O looking thing here with the O of x, that's going to be our standard deviation. So that's going to be 1.7. So we have a mean of 3.5. And our standard deviation is going to be about 1.7. And I'm going to just put a few more. That's 1.7078. Okay, so then let's look at list B. Let's do the same thing here. So I'm going to go back into stat. I'm going to go to edit, and I'm going to type in my new list here. So the next one here is 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5. Okay, then we're going to go to stat calc, and we'll click on our 1var stats again and do the same thing. We'll just calculate it. Okay, at the very top, you could see your mean, your x bar is 3.5. Okay, so they have the same mean. Both of them are 3.5 here. Okay, but the standard deviation for the second one, that came out to be 0.957. So that is not the same. So they're going to have the same mean, but they'll have different standard deviations. So we can just use choice A here for that. Okay. All right, moving up to question number 12 here. It says a book was on sale for 40% off of the original price. If the sale price of the book was $18, what was the original price of the book? Now you're going to assume that there's no sales tax. Okay. A good way to approach this problem is by using the back solving method. What is the back solving method? Well, it's where you use your answer choices to help you out here. So the question wants to know, what was the original price of the book? Okay, I'm just going to try this out. I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm just going to jump right to the middle here. Let's go start with choice C. Let's say the original price of the book was $30. Okay, well, let's see. How much would that cost if it was 40% off? Now, there's a bunch of ways you can do this. So you guys might know a few ways. I'll show you 2 ways, I think, for this problem. The first way is you can figure out what 40% of 30 would be. So if I had 30, to figure out 40% of that, I multiply it by 40 over 100 here. Okay, now you have a calculator for this part, so if you struggle with this, you can use the calculator. So we have 30 times 40 over 100, and that very simply would give us 12. Okay, so that means 40% would be $12. So if it was $12 off of this, then the final price, 30 minus 12, would be $18. Oh, look at that. The sale price was 18. That's exactly what we wanted. So right away here, I know the answer must be C. And we'd be done. Okay, now that's one way to figure out 40% off. The other way you could do this is if it's 40% off, remember everything starts at 100%, right? So if you took off 40%, that would leave you with 60%. So you actually could just go ahead and take 60% of 30, and that would be the final answer here. So again, we could just say, okay, 30 times 60 over 100. Also, I'm going to show you guys something because I think this is really useful if you don't know this already. To put a fraction in your calculator, you can always use this, which is alpha y equals enter. And if you do that, we could just type in 60 over 100. It's just a good trick to show you how to do fractions in the calculator. You can see that would give you the 18, which is exactly what you wanted. So choice C would still work here. All right, moving on then, let's go to the next page here. And let's read through this. Okay, oh, it looks like a lot of stuff here. It says 3 colonies of insects were each treated with different pesticides over an 8-week period to test the effectiveness of the 3 pesticides. Colonies A, B, and C were treated with pesticides A, B, and C respectively. Okay, so each pesticide was applied every 2 weeks to one of the 3 colonies over the 8-week period. The bar graph above shows the insect counts for each of the 3 colonies, 0, 2, 4, 6, and 8 after the initial treatment. Okay, so let's go to question 13. It says, which of the following colonies showed a decrease in size every 2 weeks after the initial treatment of the pesticide? Okay, well, let's take a look. Let's start with colony A. Let's take a look at what's happening to that. Is that decreasing every 2 weeks? Well, it started at 80. Then it looks to be around 50 something. Then it's under 40 here. And then that's lower than that. And that's lower than that. So yeah, colony A decreased every 2 weeks here. Okay, then let's go ahead and look at colony B. So it starts up here, goes down, goes down, goes down further, and that goes down further. Yeah, colony B also goes down. How about colony C? Well, it's starting at 0 here. that actually shoots up. So colony C does not work here. So it's just going to be 1 and 2 for this. Okay, so that was going to be 13 there, which is choice C. So let's go up to 14. It says, of the following, which is closest to the ratio of the total number of insects in all 3 colonies in week 8 to the total number of insects at the initial time of the treatment? Okay, so let's compare. We're looking at week 8 with the initial. So here's week 8. Here's the initial. So we're talking about all 3 colonies here. So we're going to estimate what these values would be. Okay, we're looking week 8 to the initial. Okay, so let's start with week 8. So right here, this is just slightly under 20. Since we're estimating, I'm just going to estimate that as 20. So we're going to go 20. This looks like half of that, which is 10. And then it looks like we have 50. So I'm going to go 20 plus 10 plus 50 there. 60, 70, 80, which gives me a total of 80. And then we're going to estimate what these values would be. So this is like 80, this is close to 60, and that's close to 60. So I'm just going to make those 60. So 80, 60, and 60, 80, 60, and 60 would just be 200. So if I look at this, we're doing the ratio of week 8 to week 0 initial, which would be 200 here, which is the same thing as 8 over 20. And then if I divide both those down by 4, 4 goes into 8 twice, 4 goes into 25 times. So that would just be 2/5 or 2 to 5, choice A. All right, then we're looking at question 15 here. So it says a right circular cone has a volume of 24 pi cubic inches. If the height of the cone is 2 inches, what is the radius in inches of the base of the cone? Okay, now we're talking about volume of a cone. Okay, most of you might be like, well, I don't remember the volume of a cone. And that's okay. Good news for you. Okay, if you go to the beginning of this test, you're given a little reference sheet here, okay, where they give you some formulas. And one of those formulas is volume of a cone. Okay, so make sure you take advantage of this reference sheet on the test if you forget some of these formulas. So it's 1/3 pi r squared h. So going back to our problem here, volume is 1/3 pi r squared h. Okay, now we're going to fill in what we know. So the volume is 24 pi equals the 1/3 pi r squared. Now we know the height is 2, so I could put in 2, and we're trying to solve for the radius here. Okay, so we'll do this out. We get 24 pi is equal to 1/3 times 2 would be 2/3 pi r squared. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and solve this. So I can actually just divide both sides by pi right off the bat here. So that those both reduce down to 1. So we get 24 equals 2/3 times r squared. And now if I'm trying to get the r by itself and you have a fraction in front, the easiest way to get rid of the fraction is to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply this by 3/2 times 3/2. Okay. So we'll end up with r squared is equal to 3/2 times 24. Now you could put that into your calculator if you don't know how to do this, or you could say 24 divided by 2 is just 12. 12 times 3 is 36. So we get r squared is 36. And then very simply here we take the square root of both sides. Technically it's plus or minus. So we get r is plus or minus 6, but a radius will never be a negative value. So we can reject that and know that it must just be 6 here for the radius. All right, next page here, let's go ahead and take a look at number 16. It says, in 2015, the population of city X and city Y were equal. From 2010 to 2015, the population of city X was increased by 20%, and the population of city Y decreased by 10%. If the population of city X was 120,000 in 2010, what was the population of city Y in 2010? Okay, so we have city X and we have city Y. Okay, there was a lot to read there, so I'm going to kind of just look at this again. From 2010 to 2015, the population of city X increased by 20%, and the population of city Y decreased by 10%. The population of city X was 120,000 in 2010. Okay. Now, what happened to City X? Well, it increased by 20%, okay, from 2010 to 2015. So we're going to increase that by 20%. Now, again, everything starts at 100%. So if I'm increasing it by 20%, that means I want to figure out what is 120% of my number. So if I took my 120,000 here, 120,000, you could simply just multiply it by 120 over 100. Okay, that's 120%. So we get 144,000. Okay, now we know initially the populations were equal. So initially this was also 120,000 here. And it said the population of city Y decreased by 10%. So again, if we start at 100% and I decrease by 10%, that's going to leave me at 90% here. So we're going to take 90% of that now, 120,000, okay, times it by 90 out of 100. And that would leave us with 108,000 here. Okay, 108,000. Okay, so what was the population of city Y in 2000 and, oh, I'm sorry, I must have read this wrong. Population of city X, oh, in 2015 they were equal. I did this backwards. So here's 2015. And see, that's what happens when you jump the gun. Okay, so in 2015 they were equal. So this population was 144,000 in 2015. So we actually wanted to figure out what did that come from here. Okay, so we need to figure out, well, what was this initially back in 2010? Well, again, what I know is this decreased, so we have to have something that was bigger initially. So what we need to do is take 90% of Y, so 90 over 100 times whatever Y is, that's going to equal this 144,000 there. So now to solve this, again, you just multiply by the reciprocal, which is 100 over 90 times 100 over 90. Okay, so if we do that here, we can just go ahead and take that 144,000 and then multiply it by 100 over 90. And if we do that, we get 160,000, which is choice C here. Okay, so don't be like me, don't rush through the problem. Make sure you actually read what it's saying. So then let's take a look at number 17 here. Okay, so for number 17, it says the volume of a sphere is given by this formula. V equals 4/3 pi r cubed, where r is the radius of the sphere. So we want to know which of the following gives the radius of the sphere in terms of the volume of the sphere. Okay, so another thing that you guys can do for this problem, if you get stuck on something like this, you could always substitute in values for this that make the equation true. So you could choose a value for r, put it in, and get what that v value is, and then just see which equation works. Okay, but this is a little bit easier if you do know how to rearrange this. So we're given that v is equal to 4/3 pi r cubed. And one thing I'm also going to suggest on this test, just listen to this question one more time. Which of the following gives the radius of the sphere in terms of the volume of the sphere? That sounds really confusing. So on this test, I should have mentioned this before, if you ever see this phrase in terms of, ignore that, okay? All we really want is which of the following gives the radius of the sphere. Okay, so which one gives us the radius? Solve for r. That's what it's looking for. Find r. So we're going to go ahead and do that here. So in order to do that, I can start by dividing both sides by pi. So I'm going to divide both sides by pi. So we get v over pi is equal to 4/3 r cubed. And just like we've done with a bunch of the last few problems, when you have a fraction in front, you multiply by the reciprocal. Multiply by 3/4 on both sides, 3 over 4. So that gives us 3v over 4 pi is equal to r cubed. So the very last step here, we're just going to go ahead and take the cubed root of both sides. Okay, so we get r is equal to the cubed root of 3v over 4 pi. And we're done. Okay, moving on to number 18 next here. So it says the table above shows the results of a survey in which tablet users were asked how often they would watch video advertisements in order to access streaming content for free. Based on the table, which of the following is the closest, or which of the following is closest to the probability that a tablet user answered always, given that the tablet user did not answer never? Okay, so here we have to watch our probability. It says given that they did not answer never. So we can rule that out right off the bat here. So we're only choosing from these sections here. So what's the probability that they chose always? Well, from that, we had 30.9 that chose always out of, and now what we want to do is add those up. So we have 24.3, 13.5, and the 30.9. That gives us a total of 68.7. So then the probability here, we're just going to take 30.9 divided by the 68.7, and we get 0.449, which is roughly 0.45, or choice C here. All right, number 19. It says in the equation above, A is a constant. The graph of the equation in the xy plane is a parabola. Which of the following is true about the parabola? Okay, so this is going to be very simple if you know some facts about parabolas. So first off here, if it's negative in front, okay, this is going to be a downward facing parabola, which means our vertex has to be a maximum here. Okay, so anywhere it says minimum is automatically going to be ruled out. Okay, now what we also want to know is this. If you have an equation that looks like this, x squared plus k, okay, this is the equation of a parabola here, and the vertex point is just h comma k. It's the opposite sign inside, and then you just keep the outside. So if it's a -3 inside, the opposite of that would actually be a +3, and we keep the positive a out here, which is why this has to have a maximum at d, which is 3 comma a. All right, continuing on here. So that was 19. Now we're looking at 20. So 20 here, it says the maximum value of the data set consisting of 25 positive integers is 84. A new data set consisting of 26 positive integers is created by including 96 in the original data set. Which of the following measures must be 12 greater than the new data set, for the new data set, than the original data set? Okay, so let's think about what we have. The maximum value of the first 25 positive integers was 84. Okay, and a new data set included the number 96 though. Okay, so now instead of ending at 84, now it ends at 96. So we want to know which measure has to be 12 greater. Now let's think about this. Would the mean have to be exactly 12 greater? No, because the mean is just going to be an average of everything here. Okay. The median, remember, is the middle number. The middle number is not going to change a whole, well, I mean, it could change a whole lot based on what the numbers are, but it doesn't guarantee to be 12 greater than. We simply just don't know that here. Okay, the range. Would the range increase by 12? Well, let's think about that. Imagine for this set, the lowest number was 2 originally. So let's imagine the lowest number to be 2. Now you can make it any number you want. Okay. The range here originally from 2 to 84 would have been 82. So the range would have been 82 initially. And again, I'm just making this number up. Okay. Now in my new set, if I found this range from 2 to 96, the new range of this would be 94. Okay, it's the largest number minus the smallest. So you could see that the range went up by 12. That's guaranteed to go up by 12, which is why it must be our answer here. All right, looking at number 21 here, it says Clayton will mix X milliliters of 10% by mass saline solution with Y milliliters of a 20% by mass saline solution in order to create an 18% by mass saline solution. The equation above represents this situation. If Clayton uses 100 milliliters of the 20% by mass saline solution, how many milliliters of the 10% by mass saline solution must he use? Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and substitute this in then. So Clayton's using 100% of the 20%. 100 milliliters of the 20%. All right, so let's fill that in here. So we have you know what, I'm probably going to need more room. We should put this down here. So we have 0.10x plus 0.20. Now y we're saying is 100. Okay, equals 0.18x plus 100 here. Okay, so we get 0.10x. Okay, this is the same thing as like 20% of 100, which is just 20. Okay, but again, you can type that into the calculator if you didn't know that. Okay, then we're getting 0.18x, and then 18% of 100, which is just 18, or you move the decimal 2 over. And now we're going to go ahead and solve this. So I'm going to minus off the 0.10x, minus off the 0.10x, which would be 0.08x. I'm going to subtract off the 18, subtract off the 18, so we get 2. Okay. Now, you could just do this in the calculator, this next part, but I just want to show you in case you have this in the non-calculator part. 0.08 is the same thing as 8 out of 100. So I could just change that to 8 out of 100 here, because it's in the 100th spot. This is the 10th spot, then 100th spot. So that's 8 hundredths. Then I could just multiply by 100 over 8. Multiply by 100 over 8. And the reason why I might do that is because now I can do this in my head here. And I could say, oh, 2 over 8 reduces down to 1 over 4. So it's really just 100 divided by 4, which we know is 25. So we get that x is 25 there, or choice B. Okay, but if you wanted to do that in the calculator, once you got to a certain point, you could do that as well. All right, now we're up to question 22 here. So it says, the first year Eleanor organized a fundraising event, she invited 30 people. For each of the next 5 years, she invited double the number of people she had invited the previous year. Okay, so if f of n is the number of people invited to the fundraiser n years after Eleanor began organizing the event, which of the following statements describes the function of f? Okay, well, if it's doubling each year, let's think about what's going on here. So let's say, forget 30 people. Let's just imagine it was 2. If I double that, it's 4. Then if I double that, it's 8. Then if I double that, it's 16, then 32, then 64, and then 128, and so forth and so forth. Okay, if I just keep doing that, it gets really big really fast. Okay, this increased by 2, then it increased by 4. It's not increasing by the same amount. If it's not increasing by the same amount, it can't be linear here. And we know it's increasing, so it definitely can't be decreasing, so A is out. It is increasing, but it's not linear because it's not going up by the same amount. And then again, we know it's not decreasing. This is an example of an exponential function. Okay, it's increasing very rapidly, so you're going to see that go up really, really fast there. Okay, and then looking at number 23 here. So it says, some values of x and their corresponding y values are shown in the table above, where a is a constant. If there is a linear relationship between x and y, which of the following equations represents this relationship? Okay. Personally, one way that I like to do this is to actually just substitute in value for a. Okay, it will make this table a lot easier to read here. Except never choose 0, 1, or negative 1. So I'm just going to make this simple. You know what, why don't I choose like a is 3. Okay, and I'm going to put that into my table up here. So this is really 3, 0. 3 times 3 would be 9. So this is 9, negative 3. And then 5 times 3 would be 15. Negative 2 times 3 would be negative 6. Okay, so there's a bunch of points that lie on my line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to test this out. Why don't I take that 15, negative 6, and let's try to put that into these equations. So the x value is 15. The y value is negative 6 here. Okay, and we're going to see, does it equal my a value, which was 3. Okay, so if I start this one here for number 23, and we're looking at this, we get 15, 6 times 2, negative 6 times 2 would be negative 12. Does that equal 3? It does. Okay, so A works. But if you use this method where you're going to sub in values, make sure you check every single answer to make sure it's the only one that works. So I'd quickly have to check the others. I'd say, okay, 15 plus 2 times negative 6, does that equal 5 times 3? Well, 15 minus 12 is not 15. That's out. So B is out. 2 times my x value, 15 minus, and then negative 6. I want to know, does that equal negative 5 times 3? Well, that's going to be 30 plus 6, which is definitely not equal to negative 15, so that would be out. And if I go to D, 2 times 15 minus negative 6, I want to know, does that equal 7 times 3? Well, that would be 30 plus 6, and that's definitely not equal to 21. So D would be out. So since A is the only one that works, that has to be my answer there. Okay, so you can always just substitute in values like this. All right, moving on here, we're up to question 24. It says a scatter plot above shows the number of registered voters X and the number of people who voted in the last election Y for 7 districts in a town. A line of best fit is drawn, or is shown, so we want to know which of the following could be the equation of the line of best fit. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these. What I would probably do is just pick a point, okay? Any point here, somewhere in the middle or towards the end. So maybe I'll pick this point right here. So it's 220, comma, 110. That's a point that lies on the line. Then go back to my answer choices, and let's just see which one of these works when I put back in that point. So we could take our calculator here. This is the calculator section. Okay, if I start with choice A and I type in negative 0.5 times 220, does that equal 110? No, it equals negative 110. Okay, so that's going to be out. If I go to B, 0.5 times 220, okay, you can see, oh, look at that. That is 110. So B most likely is going to be my answer, but let's just check the others just to make sure. Negative 2 times 220, I think you could see that that's definitely not 110. And 2 times 220 is also not going to be 110. So the only one that works is choice B. All right, 25 here, it says the system of equations above is graphed in the xy plane. What is the x coordinate of the intersection point xy for this system? Now this system looks a little tough. We have some decimals involved and whatnot, which can be very confusing for some people. But a way to make this easier is to get rid of the decimals. And you can do that by simply multiplying everything by 10 right off the bat here. Because if I do that, this will become 24x minus 15y equals 3. And then on the bottom, we get 16x plus 5y is equal to negative 13. Okay, I think it's just easier if you get rid of the decimals. That way you don't have to deal with decimals or forget to type a decimal in somewhere. So I like to do that right off the bat here. Next thing I want to do is I want to get 2 of the numbers to be the same with opposite signs in front of them. Well, I notice I have a 5y here, and I notice if I just divide 15 by 3, I'll also get that 5 with a negative sign in front. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a third of that entire top equation there. So a third of 24 divided by 3 would be 8x, and then a third of 15 would be 5 minus 5y, and a third of 3 would just be 1. So I get that, and then I get 16x plus 5y is equal to negative 13. So I'm using what's called the elimination method, and they call it the elimination method because when I do this and I combine my 2 equations together, the y values get eliminated here. Okay, so that's going to leave me then with 8 plus 16, which is 24x, equals 1 minus 13 would be negative 12. And then I'm just going to go ahead and divide by 24. So 12 over 24 is a half, and since it's negative, this is going to be negative 1/2 or negative 0.5. And that's exactly what we wanted. What was the x-coordinate? The x-coordinate is negative 0.5. So we have choice A there, and you'd be done. All right, next here we're looking at 26. So 26, it says Keith modeled the growth over several hundred years of a tree population by estimating the number of trees, pollen the number of trees pollen grains per square centimeter that were deposited each year within layers of a lake's sediment. Okay, he estimated that there were 310 pollen grains per square centimeter the first year the grains were deposited, with a 1% annual increase in the number of grains per square centimeter thereafter. So, which of the following functions models P of t the number of pollen grains per square centimeter t years after the first year the grains were deposited? Man, that is a handful. Okay, there is a lot to read there. So a lot going on. When you get to these, kind of just focus on your question or the important information. Okay, annually, it's increasing by 1%. Okay, this is actually going to come from this equation, A equals P, 1 plus, since it's annually, it's just R to the T here. Okay, and in this equation, A is going to be the final amount. P is going to be your principal or your initial amount. Principal. Okay. Ooh, you know what? I think that's LE, principal amount. Okay, and then R is going to be our rate as a decimal. And T is going to be our time. So what we know here is that we started with 310. So we're going to put in our principal, our initial amount, to be 310. The rate it's increasing by is 1%. Now 1% is the same thing as 1 over 100, which is the same thing as 0.01. So this becomes 1 plus 0.01 raised to the t. So our amount here would be 310. And then 1 plus 0.01 would be 1.01 to the t. And we could see that that is choice D there. And that's all we're looking for this one. Okay, going then down to number 27 here. This is an interesting question, and another one where you can actually force your answer to happen. And let me explain what I mean by that. So the question here says, based on the equation above, what is the value of 3x minus 2? Okay, you're actually going to be able to force 3x minus 2 in this problem here. And here's how you can do it. Start by distributing your 2/3 through. Okay, so I'm going to distribute my 2/3. 2/3 of 9 would be 6. 2/3 of 6 is going to be 4. And then I'm going to bring down the minus 4 equals 9x minus 6. Now, we can force 3x minus 2 to happen at this step because I could just minus off 6x, and that would leave me with, I'm going to leave actually the 2 negative 4's over here, which is 3x minus 6. But then to get minus 2, I would need to just add 4 to both sides. So if I add 4 to both sides, on the left, I'm left with a negative 4. And then on the right, I'm left with 3x, and then negative 6 plus 4 is negative 2. So 3x minus 2 is just simply negative 4. So you can force that whole expression rather than solving for x and then substituting it back in. Okay, 28 here. It says the function f is defined above. If k is a positive integer, which of the following could represent the graph of y equals f of x in the xy plane? Okay, first things first, if I were to actually distribute this through or FOIL it out, and I did x times x, that would leave me with x squared. Now the coefficient to x squared is just a positive 1 here. If the coefficient is positive, that means your parabola has to open upward here. So right off the bat, I know it has to look something like this, which eliminates a and b right off the bat here. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at what are my roots of this function. So the roots, or the zeros, are going to be when you set each one of these factors equal to 0. So if I took x plus 3 and set that equal to 0, we'd get that x is negative 3. So I have to go through the point negative 3, 0. So if I look at C and D here, the only one that goes through negative 3, 0 is choice D. And so that's how I know that must be my answer there. Whew. Okay. Coming towards the end here. Let's take a look at number 29 then. So the formula above can be used to approximate the height h in inches of an adult male based on the length L in inches of his femur. What is the meaning of the 1.88 in this context? Okay, well, look at the 1.88. Okay, if you have an equation, that's like y equals mx plus b. The 1.88 is pretty much the exact same thing, or well, it is the exact same thing as the slope. Okay, well, let's think about what slope is for a second. Slope is the change in y over a change in x. But for our problem here, the y value is the same thing as h, okay, which h is the height of the male. So this is the change in height of the male, and it's over, and then it's the x value here is the L, and the L is based on the length of his femur. Change in the length of the femur. Length of femur. So then what we're saying here is that if we have 1.88 here, the height of the male changes 1.88 inches for every 1 inch change in the length of the femur. And you can see that that's the exact same thing as choice D here. The approximate increase in a man's height, okay, in inches for each 1 increase in his femur length. And that's exactly what we just showed there. All right, and then we're looking at number 30 here. So for number 30, it says in quadrilateral ABCD above, AD is parallel to BC. AD is parallel to BC. It says CD is half of AB. What is the measure of angle B? Okay, so we're trying to figure out what this whole angle is from here to here. One thing I suggest you do for something like this is to drop a line straight from B down so it meets at a right angle. So this is a right angle. We also know that this would be a right angle up here. Okay, so I have part of angle B then. Part of angle B is 90. I know it has to be greater than 90 because it goes all the way from there to there, so it can't be choice D. So right away you know that you have a 1 out of 3 shot of getting this correct. Okay, well, let's do the next thing here. I'm going to sub in some values. Why don't I say AB here, I don't know, let's make that 10. Okay, so I'm going to say AB is 10. I'm just making up any number. Now CD is half of that. So half of 10 would simply be 5. So this CD value here is 5. Oh, well, if that's 5, that also means this has to be 5 over here too. Okay, well, what I need to do though is I need to figure out angle B. So I need to know what is that portion of angle B here. Okay, well, let's focus on our triangle now. So if I'm looking at my triangle, I can go ahead and state this. Let me redraw it. This is 5, this is 10, and I'm looking for x here. Ah, well, if I want to figure out what x is, we could use SOHCAHTOA. I could very simply here just say we have the adjacent and we have the hypotenuse. Adjacent hypotenuse comes from the cosine. So I'm going to set up my equation. I'm going to say the cosine of angle x here is equal to 5 over 10. Now, when you're doing SOHCAHTOA, anytime you're trying to solve for the angle, you go ahead and you do the arc cosine in order to figure this out. So I'm going to take the arc cosine of both sides here. Arc cosine. And when you're doing this, make sure your calculator is in degree mode, okay, since we're trying to get degrees here. Okay, and then we can just type this right into the calculator. And the way that you do this in the calculator again is you'll see the cosine down here. You hit second cosine. And then we'll put 5 over 10. And if we do that, that comes out to be 60. So I know that this is 60 here, 60. And then the whole angle would be 60 plus that 90-degree angle we created. So 60 and 90, we know that that's going to give us the 150 there, which is why it has to be choice A. All right, I hope this is making sense so far. I hope all those multiple choice made sense. Let's go ahead then and take a look at the gridding questions, which are going to be the last part of this test. All right. So taking a look at 31 here, it says Lynn has $8 to spend on apples and oranges. apples cost 65 cents each and oranges cost 75 cents each. If there is no tax on this purchase and she buys 5 apples, what is the maximum number of whole oranges she could buy? Okay, so she has $8 here. So we have $8, and we can spend 65 cents per apple. And in addition to that, oranges cost 75 cents. So it's 75 cents per orange, which I'll put as O. Okay, now she's going to buy 5 apples. Okay, so right away I'm going to put the 5 in for the A here. Times 5. And we're going to leave our O for oranges. And to figure out how many oranges she can buy, we have to solve for O. Now technically, I put equals here, but the amount we can buy actually has to be, I should change this, has to be less than or equal to 8 here. Okay. It shouldn't make too much of a difference, I don't think, for this problem, but now let's try to solve this out. So if we take 0.65 times 5, that gives us 325 here. 325 plus 0.75 oranges is going to be less than or equal to 8. And now we're just going to solve for O there for our oranges. So we're going to subtract off the 325 from both sides minus the 325 from both sides. So that would give us 475 over here. And that has to be greater than 0.75 O. And so then lastly here, let's just go ahead and divide. So we get 4.75 divided by 0.75. And we get that O would be less than or equal to, what did I just say that was? 6.3 repeating. 6.3 repeating here. So our answer for this problem then, the most oranges that we're going to be able to buy would simply be 6. Okay, so O would equal 6 here. Okay, so I saw a question in TikTok before, are you a teacher? Yes, I am a teacher. And we doing calculus? No, we're not doing calculus today. We're doing SAT stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at 32 here. So 32, it says, in the triangle above, A is equal to 34 degrees. What's the value of B plus C? Okay, so A is 34. Now in a triangle, you should know that all the angles together are 180 degrees. So we have 34 plus B plus C. All 3 of those should be 180. So let's just take off the 34 here, minus off the 34, and we're going to get B plus C is going to equal 146, if we take that. And there you go. Okay, you don't have to solve for B and C, you can just solve for the whole thing. B plus C is 146, those 2 angles together. All right, taking a look then at 33, let's go jump up to that one. It says, if the mean of 5 numbers above is 1600, what is the value of x? Okay, remember, to find the mean, we take the sum of all of our values and we divide it by the total. So we're going to be adding all these up. 700, 1200, 1600, 2000, plus whatever x is. When you divide that by 5, we need that to be 1600. Okay, so let's go ahead and solve this here. First off, why don't we just go ahead and add up all of these numbers here. And again, if you want, you have a calculator, so you can just put these in. 700 plus 1200 plus 1600. I know some people aren't very good at mental math, so if you struggle with that, just do it like this. You don't have to be doing everything out mentally. Okay, so we get 5500 here. So we get 5500 plus whatever x is divided by 5 equals 1600. So think about this as being over 1. You can just go ahead and cross multiply here. So I can do 1600 times 5 again. So 1600 times the 5. And that gives us 8,000. So we get 8,000 equals 5,500 plus x. And then to solve for x, we just subtract off the 5,500 from both sides. Okay, I didn't leave myself much room. But if we just subtract those here, then we should come out to be 2,500. And that would be our answer. Okay. All right, let's see if there's any questions on the YouTube channel. Nope, nothing over there. So everyone seems good. All right. So let's keep going here then. Let's take a look at number 34. It says the relationship between x and y can be written as y equals mx, where m is a constant. If y is equal to 17 when x is a, what is the value of y when x is 2a? Okay, well, we know y equals mx. That's what they told us. Let's start with this first part. Y is equal to 17 when x is equal to a. Okay. Well, why don't we solve this for a? So if I have m times a, to solve this for a, I'm going to simply divide by m. So I get that a is equal to 17 over m. Okay. Well, I wanted to figure out, well, what's y then when x is 2a? Well, we know y is equal to mx. So we want to know what is y when x is 2a. So I'm going to replace the x with 2a. But now we figured out what a was. A is 17 over m. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to substitute that in for a up here. So I'm going to say y is equal to m times 2 times 17 over m. Okay. Now, if you struggle with this, okay, and you're not sure how to do this or how to simplify this, you can just throw in any value for m. Okay, so if you want to, you could say, let's say m was 2 here. If I put that in, we get y equals 2 times 17 over 2. And you'd be able to just type that right into the calculator. 2 times 17 over 2. And that will give you the correct answer, which is 34 there. So y is 34 is the correct answer. Or if you know how to do this, you could simply say, well, if we have m over m, those reduce down to 1. 17 times 2 would just be 34. Either way works. Okay, if you want to use substitution, you can. If you want to just simplify it down, you could just simplify it down. All right, then we have our last 4 questions here. So let's take a look at number 35. 35 says in the equation above, a and b are constants. If the equation has infinitely many solutions for x, then what is the value of b? Okay, let's talk about what it means to have infinitely many solutions. Earlier today, I think we talked about no solution, which no solution meant our lines never intersected. Okay, but if we have infinitely many solutions, that means our lines are always intersecting. They have to be the exact same line. They have the same slope, and they're going to have the same y-intercept here. So I need my left side to be the exact same as my right-hand side. So let's make that happen. Let's distribute that a through. So we get ax plus ab equals 4x plus 10. Well, if I have 4x's on the right-hand side, well, then I better have 4x's on the left-hand side. So a would have to be 4. So we have 4x plus 4b is equal to 4x plus 10. Okay, so now 4x equals 4x, which means then that 4b has to equal 10. In order for these to have infinitely many solutions, they have to be the exact same. So we could just take 4b, set it equal to 10, and then just divide both sides by 4. And if I reduce that down, I could divide both those by 2. It would just be 5 over 2. And there's our answer, which you can also write as 2.5. The test will take either answer. Either one of those would be acceptable. Okay. All right, moving down to 36 here. A question that a lot of people struggle with. So let's take a look at this. It says, in the xy plane, a line that has the equation y equals c for some constant c intersects a parabola at exactly 1 point. If the parabola has the equation y equals negative x squared plus 5x, what's the value of c? Okay, take advantage of the fact that you have a calculator here. If you don't know what this looks like right off the bat, graph it. Okay, so if you go to y equals here, okay, you could just type this in. So negative x squared plus 5x. Okay, click enter, and then if you click graph, you'll see what it looks like. It looks something like this right here. Okay, so I know my function looks something like this. Now, the line y equals c, okay? C is just some constant. It could be 4, it could be 5, it could be any number. Well, the line y equals a constant is just going to be a straight horizontal line, something like this, okay? But we only wanted to intersect the parabola at one point. If I drew it right here, it would intersect at 2 points. So clearly I don't want to put it there. The only way I can draw this intersecting at 1 point is if I draw it through this maximum point here. Okay, so if I draw it through the maximum point, well, that's a really bad horizontal line. Okay, it would look something like this. So I need to figure out, well, what's the equation of that line? Well, I need to know what's the y value for this maximum point here. So if you have your calculator, there's a simple way to do this. You can very simply, after you graph it, you'll see this button that says Calc up here. You can hit second and then click on the Calc button. And you'll actually see right there, number 4, it says maximum. So I'm going to click on maximum, and I'm going to find this left bound. Now left bound means just go anywhere to the left of the point, the maximum point, and click enter. When it says right bound after that, you're going to go to the right of the point, anywhere to the right of it, and click enter. And it's going to ask you to guess. So you're going to guess roughly where that maximum point is, and click enter. And you'll see it says it happens at x is 2.5, and the y value is 6.25. Well, the y value is what we want because we're looking for where y equals c. So y would be 6.25. That would be the equation of this line here that only intersects it once. And if we want to verify this, we can even just go ahead and graph this in. So if you look at this, if I put in y is 6.25 and click graph again, you'll see it hits right through that maximum point there. So it only touches the parabola once. Okay. All right, last 2 questions here. Guys, make sure if you do have questions and you want any questions answered that you leave them in the YouTube chat. I'll try to check the TikTok chat here too. Make sure you are leaving your questions there. And once I finish these last 2, if there are additional questions, I'll make sure to answer them. Okay, so make sure you do type those out. All right, but let's take a look at number 37 here. So it says, what is the peregrine falcon's maximum speed while diving to catch prey in feet per second? Okay, well, we better figure out what the falcon's maximum speed is. So if we go back up to the top here, it says our falcon can reach speeds of up to 200 miles per hour. Okay, 200 miles per hour. Okay, so if I'm trying to figure this out in feet per second, okay, we're going to use this thing called dimensional analysis where we're going to convert this. So in order to convert this here, we're going to multiply by our conversion ratio. So if I have miles on the top, I'm going to put miles on the bottom, and I want to convert from miles to feet here. Okay, so what's the conversion? Well, I know 1 mile is 5,280 feet. So miles will get rid of miles here. So now I'm left with feet per hour. But I don't want feet per hour, I want feet per second here. So now we got to convert the hours. So if I have hours on the bottom, I'm going to put hours on the top. And let's start with hours to minutes, because I know that 1 hour is 60 minutes. So the hour will get rid of the hour. So now I'm left with feet per minute. But again, I don't want feet per minute, I want per second. So now let's convert this by putting minutes on the top and seconds on the bottom. So I know that there's 60 seconds in 1 minute. So minutes will cross out with minutes here. So my units at the end will be feet per second. Oh, that's exactly what I wanted, so I know I've done this correctly. And then very simply, we can just go to our problem here. And we have 200 times 5,280 times, and then it's 1 over 60. So I'm going to put this as 1 over 60. Okay. And then times another 1 over 60. So alpha y equals enter to get the fraction there. 1 over 60. And if I click enter, we'll get 880 over 3. But that's going to be too big to go ahead and put into the Scantron. So make sure you do convert that to decimal. If you hit math and then convert it to decimal, which gives us 293 here. And since it wants the nearest whole number, just 293. Feet per second. So there we go. All right, and then we have our last question here. So our last question, it says, if the falcon dove at its maximum speed for half of a mile to catch prey, how many seconds would the dive take? Okay, So it's going half a mile. Now you're going to want to know for this, if you remember, distance equals rate times time, if you've seen that formula before. Okay, we're going to fill this in. So the distance was half a mile, so we're going to do half a mile. And we know the Falcon's speed is 200 miles per hour, so that's our rate, 200 miles per hour. So we're going to find the time. Now the only thing is this time is going to be in hours because we have miles and miles per hour, but that's all right. So I'm going to divide this by 200 here. So if we type that in, 0.5 divided by 200, you could see that gives us 0.0025, 0025. But again, that's hours. Okay. So now what we want to do is convert that into seconds. Okay, so again, you could use your dimensional analysis like we did before. If this is in hours, we know that 1 hour, 1 hour is equal to 60 minutes. And then I know that the conversion between minutes and seconds, we know that 60 seconds is also 1 minute. So hours to hours cross out, minutes and minutes will cross out, so that will leave me with seconds. So I just need to multiply our answer here, 0.0025 by 60, and then multiply it again by 60. And if I do that, this would take 9 seconds. And there we go. Okay, so there's our entire SAT test done, test number 10. If you guys have questions, make sure to ask them now. So let me see if there's anything here. You're welcome, Matt. I'm glad I could help you out here. And it looks like TikTok, do we have any questions over there? It looks like nope, we do not. All right, guys. Well, if you missed any of this video and you do want to see some more of it, you can obviously go ahead and find it. It's going to be on the YouTube channel, so you can go over there and rewatch this again afterwards. All right. All right, guys. Good luck. If you are taking the test tomorrow, go ahead and make sure you watch some of the other videos on the strategies of this test, other videos that we've put out here. They'll be very, very useful for you. All right. Good luck, everyone.